Princess Elara of the Dawnrealm woke to the sound of bells. They tolled from the high tower above her chambers, deep and iron-laden, the kind used not for festival or worship, but for pronouncements that could not be argued with. Her body knew before her mind caught up. She lay very still beneath the thin silk coverlet, hands folded over her stomach, feeling the tremor in her fingers. The bells only rang that way when a treaty had been signed. A soft knock came at her door. 1, then 2, then 3, precisely measured. Elara slid her feet from the bed, toes skimming over cool stone. She did not reach for a candle. Darkness was no stranger to her. It had lived against her eyes since childhood. "Enter," she said. The door opened on its old hinges. She heard the rush of air from the corridor, smelled beeswax, ink, and the faint, familiar spice that clung to her father's robes. "Daughter." King Alistair's voice was heavy, older than it sounded in court. "Come, we must speak." The weight in his tone turned her insides hollow. Elara reached to the small table beside her bed, fingers finding the ribbon of her blindfold by memory. The strip of fabric was soft from years of use, embroidered with tiny dawn birds her mother had stitched before sickness took her. Elara lifted it to her face and wound it securely around her head, tying the knot at the back with practiced hands. The darkness did not change, but the world narrowed and steadied. The friction beneath her fingers as she tightened the knot was grounding, real. Her father must have known she was already blindfolded, yet she sensed the way he watched her, a faint intake of breath at the ritual. She stood and smoothed her nightdress. "I am ready." "Dress for travel," he said. "Melara is waiting with your clothes." She heard Melara step forward, the whisper of skirts, the clink of buckles. "Your Highness," Melara said softly, "I have your riding leathers prepared as requested, and a cloak. It will be cold on the northern road." "On the northern road," Elara repeated. "So it's Varenth." Silence answered. It was all the confirmation she needed. The bells continued to toll above. Elara turned away so her father would not see the brief tightening in her jaw. "I will be swift." Melara helped her into fitted leathers and a tunic lined with fur at the collar. Her fingers were deft, efficient, but Elara could feel the tension in them. Melara had been with her since she was a child, first as nursemaid, then as attendant, then as the one who could be trusted not to panic when Elara muttered prophecy in her sleep. Now those careful hands buckled a travel belt around Elara's waist and pressed gloves into her palms. "Your hair?" Melara asked. "Braid it," Elara said. "No ornaments." "As you wish." While Meara's fingers moved through her hair, Elara listened to her father's breathing. In court, he filled a chamber with his presence alone. Today, he seemed smaller, weighed down. "So," she said, her voice steady, "the Basilisk Lord has agreed to peace." For the first time in 3 generations. Leather creaked as the king shifted his weight. "The border raids will cease. Trade roads will open. Our farmers will no longer find their fields burned overnight. It is more than I'd hoped for." "And the price?" Elara asked. "I assume it is not grain." Her father hesitated. That told her everything. "You are to go to Varenth as a guest of his court," he said carefully, "as a symbol of trust between our nations." "A political hostage," she translated, calm and precise. "Let us call the thing by its name, father. I am to be leverage." "You are to be a bridge," his tone roughened. "We cannot endure another winter with our storehouses pillaged. The people are tired. I am tired. This is the best path forward." Meara's fingers paused in her hair, then continued more tightly. Elara tried to imagine Varenth. She had never seen it, except in brief, jagged flashes that came in the worst of her half-controlled visions. A fortress carved into black stone, banners snapping in a wind that smelled of iron. Legends in the Dawnrealm called it the Serpent's Keep. Children whispered stories of the Basilisk Lord, whose eyes could crumble stone and turn warriors to dust. Mothers invoked his name to make their sons stop boasting about glory in war. Elara had heard every one of those stories before she was 10. They had not frightened her then. Stories rarely did. Reality was another matter. "I thought," she said quietly, "that the Dawnrealm would never send its last seer beyond its borders. We will have other seers." There was strain in her father's denial. "The gift appears where it will." "And the blindfolds follow," Elara murmured. His silence was answer enough. The blindfold had gone on when her visions first surged. Too strong, too vivid. At 8 years old, she had screamed in her sleep, babbling about men who had not yet died and cities yet to burn. The court had feared her. High Seeress Vailith had knelt before the trembling child and said, with a voice like dry leaves, "If you cannot control what you see, you must control what you allow yourself to see." So they had bound the world away from her eyes. Maera tied off the braid and rested a hand briefly on Elara's shoulder. "There," she whispered. Elara straightened. "When do we depart?" she asked. "As soon as the escort is assembled," her father said. "By midday. The Basilisk Lord expects you within a fortnight." His words were iron. The bells fell silent above them, leaving a ringing hollow in the air. Elara inclined her head. "Then I will say my farewells." Her father's footsteps moved closer. A hand, calloused, familiar, touched her cheek, rough against the smooth cloth of her blindfold. "I would not send you if there were another way," he said quietly. "I know," she replied. It was true. She knew the numbers. The year's harvest had been poor, the border skirmishes costly. Varyn's warbands moved like shadows along the northern ridge. The Dawnrealm could not afford a prolonged conflict. Still, some small part of her whispered traitor against her own pragmatism. Not to him, to herself, to whatever child she had once been who dreamed of choosing her own path. "I will do what I must," she said, "because duty filled the hollow places where freedom should have lived." His hand lingered another heartbeat, then withdrew. "The gods keep you, Elara." If they had wanted to keep her, they could have started earlier, she thought, but did not say it aloud. She bowed her head instead. "I will keep myself," she murmured. The journey north blurred into a succession of sounds and temperatures, the clatter of hooves on stone streets as they left the capital behind, the hushed murmur of soldiers' voices, the crackle of campfires, sparks rising into air she could only imagine. Elara rode side-saddle at first, then abandoned decorum for practicality, swinging one leg over the saddle like any soldier when the roads grew rough. The horse beneath her, whom she privately named Ember for the way he snorted and stamped, became a new anchor. She learned the cadence of his stride, the subtle shifts of muscle when he scented something ahead. Mera rode close by. Elara heard the rattle of the attendant saddle charms, the ones meant to ward off ill luck and wandering spirits. "You are crushing that poor amulet," Elara said one afternoon as they wound through a pine-choked ravine. Mera made a strangled sound. "You can hear that?" "You breathe louder when you're nervous," Elara replied. "And you only breathe like that when you're ringing the charms." Mera huffed. "You are the one being delivered to a rumored monster, Your Highness. I am allowed nerves on your behalf." "A rumored monster who signs treaties," Elara corrected. "Monsters rarely bother with parchment. They simply take what they want." "Perhaps he does both." "Comforting," Elara said dryly. The guards riding ahead chuckled uneasily. As the air grew colder, the scents changed. The warm dust and spice of the southern plains gave way to resin and rock, to sharp winds that knifed through cloak and leather. At night, Elara sat near the fire, listening to the crackle and the low murmur of voices. Sometimes, on the edge of sleep, the blindfold was not enough. Visions pressed against the inside of her skull, frustrated by darkness, searching for cracks. On the 5th night, she woke with a bitten-back cry, heart hammering. Her gloved hands clawed at the earth beside her bedroll. "Elara?" Myra's voice, thick with sleep. "What is it?" Her throat was dry. The after-image of something vast and dark pulsed behind the blindfold. She tasted ash on her tongue. "Nothing. It passed." Myra shifted closer, blanket rustling. "Was it there?" she whispered. "Therenth?" Elara hesitated. In the vision, she had stood in a vast hall of stone. The air had been cold enough to burn her lungs. At the far end, on a raised dais, a figure in black armor sat very still, helm gleaming. She could not see his face, could not see his eyes. Around him, the essence lines of the world, those invisible currents she had always sensed at the edges of awareness, whirled like a storm held in check. Merely remembering made her temples ache. "Yes," she said softly, "I think so." Myra's hand settled, warm and firm over her own. "Then perhaps it is not all danger. You are still alive in that vision, are you not?" "Alive," Elara agreed. "But I do not know how long." "Then we will cling to that much," Myra said, "and to each other." Elara turned her hand to grip Myra's fingers. "You know you need not come with me," she said. "You could have remained in the Dawnrealm." "I know," Myra said simply. "I chose not to." Elara smiled faintly into the dark. "Stubborn woman. Takes one to know one." The warmth of Myra's presence and the fire's crackle slowly lulled Elara back toward sleep. The visions did not return that night, but the memory of that storm of essence lingered. Whatever the Basilisk Lord truly was, he was not emptiness. He was force contained. She wondered what it felt like for him. They saw Therenth before they reached it, or so Elara assumed from the shift in the air. The wind grew harsher, funneled between sheer cliffs. The sound of distant water echoed faintly, perhaps a river far below. The horses' hooves changed from the crunch of frost-hardened earth to the sharper clink of iron on carved stone. "Careful," Captain Thorin called back. "The causeway narrows here. Keep your mounts steady." Ilara's fingers tightened on Ember's reins. "We are close?" "Closer than I like," Thorin muttered under his breath. Then louder, "The fortress gate should be in sight any moment." In sight. The phrase pricked at her. Sight was something the world took for granted, threw into casual speech. For her, it was always either too much or none at all. The convoy slowed. Breath puffed in ragged clouds, though Elara could only feel the chill prick against the exposed strip of skin at her throat. Armor clinked. Someone shifted forward ahead. "Elara," Myra whispered, "the Serpent's Keep. It's God's. It's carved straight from the mountain, black stone, all the way up." "The walls look like they're growing out of the cliff." Elara pictured it, a fortress hewn from obsidian, jagged and imposing. She thought of her visions, the cold hall, the storm of essence. "And the gate?" she asked. "A great arch," Myra answered, "with a circle of carved serpents over it. Their eyes are too lifelike." "Reassuring," Elara said, but her mouth felt dry. The horses halted. Hoofbeats echoed off stone. Voices called in a language Elara did not know, clipped and sharp. Thorin rode forward to answer. "We come under banner of truce from the Dawnrealm," he shouted. "We bear Princess Elara Dawnfell as agreed by treaty." His words bounced back from the fortress walls. For a long, stretched moment, nothing happened. Then metal groaned. The sound of massive mechanisms grinding into motion rolled through the air. Elara heard a gate rising or doors opening, heavy stone moving aside from heavier stone. The essence around them shifted. She could not see it, not with the blindfold on, but she felt it, like the pressure before a storm. It gathered ahead, not wild, but tightly leashed. Her horse shied. "Elara," Maera's voice was tight. "I feel him," Elara whispered. She did not know how she knew it was the Basilisk Lord himself, and not merely one of his captains, but the presence ahead, dense, coiled, somehow weighted, could not belong to anyone else. The convoy moved forward again, hooves clattering as they passed beneath some archway. The air grew cooler, shadowed. After the strain of travel, the sudden stillness inside the gate felt like stepping underwater. "Dismount," Thorn ordered. Hands moved to help Elara swing down. She landed on stone polished by years of wear. Armor clinked in front of her. Boots approached, measured and deliberate. The essence pressure intensified. She breathed in, out, pressed her fingertips lightly against the inside of her wrist, feeling the steady beat there. She was not a child. She would not tremble. "Princess Elara of the Dawnrealm," Thorn's voice rang out, "I present you to Lord Kael Varyn of Varenth." The footsteps stopped a few paces away. The air felt occupied, as if a wall had grown legs and walked toward her. "Elara Dawnfell," a man's voice said. It was lower than she had imagined, not the hissing drawl popular in tavern tales, not the booming roar bards used when they played the villain. It was rough, as if the speaker did not use it often, but carefully controlled. Her horse shied. "Lord Kael," she replied, inclining her head. A pause. She could almost hear him examining her. The blindfold, the tilt of her chin, the crispness of her Dawnrealm accent. "You come under treaty," he said. His words were formal. The tone beneath them was unreadable. "I do," Elara answered, "as agreed by both our realms." "And willingly?" he asked. Thorn shifted beside her. Maera sucked in a breath. Elara considered, then chose honesty. "As willingly as any hostage," she said calmly. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, a huff of breath. "Not quite humor, not quite contempt. Then you are either very brave," the Basilisk Lord said, "or very honest." "May I not be both?" she asked. Another pause. Then, "We will see." She heard the faint ring of metal as he shifted. Cloth rustled. There was a sense of something enclosed. Helm, she guessed, from the muffled quality of his voice. "Your escort will be given quarters," he continued. "Your attendant may remain with you. You, Princess, will be housed in the East Tower, away from the main barracks. Food will be brought. If you require anything, speak to Captain Halvek." "Then the Dawnrealm thanks you for your hospitality," Elara said. Her pulse drummed, but her tongue kept pace with courtly phrases. Armor could be made of words as much as steel. "You will be summoned to the Great Hall later," he added. "There are matters we must clarify." "Regarding my status?" Elara asked. "Regarding many things," he said. His presence shifted backward. The pressure in the essence eased, not gone, but less immediate. The clink of his approaching guards followed, then the firm rhythm of him walking away, boots on stone, fading. He was not as tall as some of the legends made him, Maera would tell her later, not a giant. But there had been something about the way he moved, controlled, deliberate, as if he weighed each step before taking it. For now, Elara stood in his wake, muscles tense. Maera touched her elbow. "Come, Your Highness, they're waiting to show us to your chambers." The guide assigned to them spoke Dawnrealm common with a clipped accent. "This way, Princess. The Lord has ordered you placed where no wandering soldier will bother you." "Or where escape would be difficult," Elara translated silently. They climbed stair after stair. Elara counted steps under her breath, mapping the tower in her mind. Every turn, every echo, every draft of cold air from some arrow slit became a landmark. At last the guide halted. "Your chambers," he said. A key turned in a heavy lock. "There is a brazier inside. The girl can tend it if she knows how to mind coals." "I do," Maera said curtly. "Good. If you need anything, speak to the guard outside." A faint smirk. "Not that he will understand you, but he will find someone who does, eventually." The door shut behind them with a thud. Maera exhaled. "Ill-mannered oaf," she muttered. "Throwing us in a tower like a pair of misbehaving children." Elara walked forward slowly, hands spread. She brushed a table, the smooth back of a chair, felt the texture of woven rugs beneath her boots. The room smelled faintly of smoke and lavender oil, of stone that had known winters, of old wood. "It is not a dungeon, at least," she said. "I have a bed? 2, even," Maera replied. "A hearth, shutters, a balcony. Small, but there. You can feel the mountain wind through the cracks. And, oh, what? A tapestry," Maera said, voice going a bit distant. "Of serpents again. They like serpents here, but the weaving is fine." Elara smiled faintly. "I will take your word for it." Maera moved to fuss with the hearth, coaxing flames into life. The crackle and warmth began to press back the chill. Elara crossed to where she guessed the balcony might be, and found a door with a stubborn latch. She pushed it open and stepped out, gripping the stone railing. The wind struck her like a slap, cold and sharp. It smelled of snow and distant water, of rock that had never known the soft mosses of the Dawnrealm's forests. She closed her eyes behind the blindfold, not because it changed anything, but because it was habit, and reached inward, brushing against the edges of her sight. The treaty was signed. She was here. The Basilisk Lord was, for now, content to keep her alive. But the essence around this place thrummed like a bowstring drawn too tight. She felt the storm again, a spiral of force caged inside stone walls and iron will. It did not feel merely like one man's presence. It felt like a legacy, old and worn and dangerous. The vision did not come as a torrent this time, just a flicker. A hall of stone, shouts echoing, something shattering, glass, bone, and a voice she recognized now as the Basilisk Lord's, raw and unguarded, shouting her name. "Elara!" Her heart lurched. "Maera," she said sharply. Maera dropped something with a clatter. "What is it? Come here." Footsteps hurried across the rugs. A hand touched her arm. "I'm here. What did you see?" "Not clearly," Elara swallowed. "A hall, noise, something breaking, and his voice." She hesitated, then said it. "He sounded afraid." Maera was silent for a beat. "Monsters do not feel fear," she said, trying for lightness and missing. "So either he is not a monster, or that was not truly him." "Elara," came a new voice from inside the chamber. "Captain Thorin." She turned. "Yes." "The Basilisk Lord has convened his council," Thorin said. His boots scraped just outside the threshold. He did not presume to enter. "He has requested your presence." "Muttered," Maera muttered. Elara stepped back inside, letting Maera close the balcony door against the wind. "Then we must not keep him waiting," Elara said. Her stomach knotted, but her voice remained even. Whatever fate waited in those halls, she would meet it as a princess of the Dawnrealm, not as a trembling sacrifice.
"Mera, help me straighten my cloak." Mera's fingers fussed with the fur-lined collar, tugged at a fold, adjusted the lie of the blindfold where it disappeared into Elara's braid. "You look like you are about to scold a council of fools," Mera murmured. "Good," Elara said. "I feel like I am about to meet one." Thorin snorted. "Careful, Highness. They might understand enough of our tongue to be offended. Then they can practice their diplomacy," she replied. Thorin stepped aside to let them pass. "Stay close," he advised as they moved into the stairwell. "And do not remove your blindfold under any circumstances." Elara's hand tightened on the railing. "Believe me, Captain, that is one order I intend to obey." They descended, boots echoing. The air grew cooler again as they approached the heart of the fortress. The great hall awaited, a place of stone and shadows, of old wounds and older power. and somewhere within it the man whose curse could raise armies, and whose signature now lay beside her father's on a fragile line of ink. Elara lifted her chin as they walked. Hostage or not, this was the path she had been set upon. What she did with it would be her choice. The shout of voices hit first. Not a brawl, but a heated argument, sharp words layered over one another in Varyn's tongue. Elara could not understand the meaning, but she could hear the tone, anger, derision, the brittle edge of fear. The great hall's doors opened with a low groan. Thorin guided her forward. Heat from braziers rolled over her, thick with the smell of smoke and something metallic. The floor underfoot was smooth stone. Sound traveled oddly here, bouncing in unexpected directions. "Elara Dawnfell, Princess of the Dawnrealm," Thorin announced in a carrying voice, "as requested." The argument faltered into silence. She felt dozens of eyes on her. It prickled against her skin. "Bring her forward," the Basilisk Lord's voice said. Still controlled, a little roughened, as if he had been speaking more than usual. Thorin's hand brushed her elbow, guiding her to a stop. She guessed she now stood near the center of the hall. "Elara," Kael said. For the first time he used her name without title. "Lord Kael," she replied. "You arrive at a moment of lively discussion," he said. "Some of my counselors do not approve of our treaty." There it was, the first crack in the facade. Elara smiled faintly. "I would be astonished if they did. Peace rarely pleases those who profit from war." A murmur rippled through the hall. Someone muttered in a dialect she could not parse. Another voice, smoother and sharper, replied. "That tongue," Mara breathed almost inaudibly at her side. "He sounds like he swallowed a snake." "Lord Sereth," Kael said, and his tone cooled. "You may repeat your objections if you wish, now that our guest is present." Ilara's pulse quickened. So this was the cousin she had heard no name for until now. The smooth voice spoke, this time in careful common. "We have served Varenth in blood for generations," Sereth said. "The Dawnrealm has cost us fathers and sons and coin. You would end that struggle with ink, and ransom yourself to them by accepting a hostage into our home. How can we be sure she is not a weapon in silk?" Elara tilted her head toward where his voice came from. "I assure you, my lord," she said evenly, "if I were a weapon, my father would have aimed me somewhere less drafty." A few snorts of surprise, perhaps humor, broke the tension. "And yet," Sereth said, undeterred, "you arrive veiled like a conspirator, unwilling to let us see your eyes." "This blindfold is not for your comfort or mine," Elara replied. "It is for your safety." "Dramatic," Sereth murmured. "How convenient. The monster has claws. The hostage has hidden daggers. We are all to tremble." The word monster scratched at the air. The essence around them reacted, tightening. She felt it, an invisible flinch. Kael's voice, when it came, was soft. "Enough." "But cousin—" "I said enough," Kael repeated. A pause. Then Sereth fell silent. Elara could feel it now, the tension between them, stretched thin as wire. Not just disagreement, history. "Princess Elara is here under my protection," Kael said to the hall, "by treaty with the Dawnrealm and by my word. Anyone who moves against her moves against me." A rustle of unease. Someone cleared their throat. "And in return," Sereth pressed, "what do we gain beyond the dubious honor of guarding another realm's broken toy?" The words landed like a slap. Elara forced her shoulders to remain loose. "We gain trade," Kael said flatly, "grain, salt, wood. We gain a breathing space in which to mend our own wounds instead of tearing them open further to spill more blood for your glory.
"And we gain a seer," Sereth said. "Do not think we have forgotten the old stories, cousin. The Dawnrealm does not blindfold its daughters for a game. What visions has she already carried back to her king in dreams?" Elara's muscles tightened. Kael's silence stretched. She could lie, say her sight was gone, burnt out, useless. It might even be true one day if she never lifted the blindfold again. But something in her resisted that erasure. "If my father wished to use my visions as weapons," she said calmly, "he would not have sent me away at all. He would have chained me to his side and asked me which of you he should strike first." The hall went very quiet. She continued, voice level. "Instead, he sent me here, perhaps because he is tired of wars dictated by what might be. Perhaps because he is selfish and wished to be rid of a troublesome daughter. Perhaps because he believes you might protect me better than he can." She tilted her head slightly toward Kael's voice. "Or perhaps he simply believes you are not the monster everyone says." That made the air change. "Careful, princess," Sereth said softly. "Flattery comes ill from a hostage." "It is not flattery," Elara replied. "If he were a monster, I would already be dead." A hush followed. Then, unexpectedly, Kael laughed. It was a short sound, rusty, as if he had not used that muscle in a long time. But it shifted the hall's mood like sunlight through a cloud. "You see, cousin," he said, "some in this world still possess sense." Sereth said nothing, but she could feel his gaze like a prickle on her skin. "We will discuss these matters further later," Kael said to the hall. "For now, the treaty stands. The princess remains under my protection. Let that be the end of it." Murmurs rose again, this time subdued, grudging. Elara exhaled slowly. She had not realized she had been holding her breath. "Come," Kael said, nearer now. She heard the faint scrape of his boots. "Walk with me, princess. There are things we must speak of privately." Thorin shifted beside her, but Kael added, "Your captain may follow, if it so eases him. I have no wish to test your trust on the first day." Elara heard Maera's faint sigh of relief. She inclined her head. "Very well." As they moved away from the cluster of voices, the hum of the hall faded, leaving only the echo of their footsteps. "You speak plainly for a princess raised in silk," Kael said after a moment. "You speak harshly for a lord raised in stone," she countered. "Stone does not raise children," he said. "It merely fails to soften them." They walked in silence for a few steps more. Elara counted them unconsciously, noting the change in acoustics as they turned into a narrower corridor. "I brought you here to warn you," Kael said quietly. The formal mask in his voice had slipped, leaving something more human. "There are those among my people who do not want this peace. They see you as a symbol of surrender. They will attempt to use you, to frighten you, perhaps to harm you." "And you?" she asked. "What do you see me as?" There was a long pause. "An obligation," he said at last. "A responsibility I chose when I put my name to that treaty. And a risk, to you and to myself." "To yourself?" Elara echoed. "You are not the only one here whose presence can destabilize a realm," he said dryly. The storm of essence pulsed at the edges of her awareness, coiled and contained. "They fear your curse," she said softly. "As well they should." "And you?" He was silent for so long she thought he would not answer. "I have lived my life trying not to fear myself," he said finally. "Some days I fail." She swallowed. "I felt it," she admitted. "At the gate, in the hall, your power." "You should not let your sight brush against it," he said sharply. "It is not safe for you." "I did not mean to," she protested. "It rises like a storm. It presses against everything." He made a soft, frustrated sound. "Then I will have to try harder." She turned her face slightly toward where she thought his helm might be, beneath the hood of his presence. "Why did you sign the treaty?" she asked. "Truly." "Because I am tired," he said, "of seeing my people freeze while we pour steel into the ground, of mothers burying sons for a hill crest, of waking up every day and wondering whether, if I make one misstep, I will turn this entire mountain into a tomb." The honesty in his voice startled her. "And because," he added reluctantly, "your father and we both inherited feuds begun by men long dead. I am not interested in dying for their decisions." She stood quietly with that for a moment. "We are more alike than I expected," she said. "You and I." "Do not say that too loudly," he replied. "It will ruin my reputation." Despite herself, Elara smiled. Behind the blindfold, in the dark she had chosen, something eased. Later that night, as she lay in the unfamiliar bed high in the east tower, she replayed his words. The storm of essence pulsed, restless beneath the fortress. The visions pressed but did not break through. For the first time since the bells rang in the Dawnrealm, she felt not only dread, but curiosity. The Basilisk Lord was no mindless monster. And somewhere in the shadows of his own halls, his cousin and others like him whispered and plotted, unhappy with the ink that bound their war-hungry realm to peace. Elara turned her face toward the distant sound of mountain wind. If she could survive this place, she might yet do more than merely endure it. She might change it. The days that followed unfolded like a slow, unspooling cord, each moment taut with caution, each hour edged with the unfamiliar rhythms of Varenth. Elara learned the shape of her tower chamber by touch and sound, the way the shutters rattled when northern winds rose, the uneven stone near the hearth where someone once dropped an iron poker, the soft hum of guards changing shifts outside her door, always two sets of boots, heavy, disciplined, and watchful. What she could not map so easily were the people, their voices, their emotions, their secrets. Varenth was a land of iron-boned courtesy and silence thick enough to hide knives. And beneath it all, the pulsing storm that was Lord Kael. He kept his distance after their first conversation, but she sensed him in the background of the fortress's atmosphere, as if the walls themselves held their breath around him. The essence pressed differently whenever he entered a room, a contained whirlpool of force. Elara, meanwhile, adapted by fussing and fretting just as she had in the Dawnrealm, except now it came with mutters about stone-hearted northerners and windows that look like murder holes. She kept Elara fed, warm, and frequently scolded. "You hardly touched your breakfast," she said one morning as she collected dishes. "That cook of theirs makes fine porridge, even if he's stingy with the honey." "It is excellent," Elara said. "My stomach simply disagrees with my nerves." Elara paused, then sighed. "I hate that you were sent here." Elara reached for her hand. "I know." The morning quiet was interrupted by a knock at the chamber door. Not the guard's heavy knock, but something lighter, deliberate. "Princess Elara," Captain Thorin's voice came through the wood. "The Basilisk Lord requests your presence in the gardens." "Gardens?" Elara repeated. "In this frozen place?" Thorin cleared his throat. "You'll see." Elara allowed Elara to settle her cloak around her shoulders and adjust the blindfold's knot, then followed Thorin down the spiraling stair. The air grew colder as they descended, then warmed slightly as they reached a grand archway that opened onto a sheltered courtyard. She stepped onto stone tiles and inhaled sharply. The smell surprised her, fresh, living, green. Elara whispered, awed, "By the gods!" Elara listened. Water trickled somewhere. A fountain? Leaves rustled overhead. The air held the crispness of winter, but also the scent of pine needles, frost-touched blossoms, herbs crushed under careful feet. Varinth had cured stone, but it had found a way to coax life from it. "Walk straight ahead," Kael's voice said from a few paces away. She followed the sound. His presence anchored the space, heavy yet restrained. The tension in the essence felt gentler here, as if the plants themselves softened its edges. "Your gardens are unexpected," Elara said. Kael gave a low hum. She suspected it might be his version of amusement. "We do what we can in the north. The mountain allows little, but it gives some things generously. Resilience, for one." Elara's fingers brushed a low branch. The needles were soft, curved. "It's beautiful." "The gardeners grow herbs for healing," Kael said. "They keep this place alive through winter, and the green helps settle those who struggle with confinement." It took her a moment to understand. Then she looked in his direction. "You mean you?" She felt him still. The silence between them tightened, too brittle, too revealing. Elara hissed under her breath, horrified. "No," Kael said quietly. "She is not wrong." Elara waited. She sensed the shift in his breathing, the controlled way he reached for words.
"This garden is where I come when I feel the curse press too close," he said. "The air is easier here, the quiet helps, and the plants absorb more essence than stone." It was the most personal thing he had said yet. "I feel safer here too," Elara admitted softly. "The visions are quieter. Then it seems we share the same refuge." A thought occurred to her. "Is that why you summoned me? To give me a place less oppressive than the Great Hall?" "That," Kael said, "and because we need to talk where no counselor will eavesdrop." He gestured. She heard the leather of his gauntlet creak. "Sit, if you wish." A bench waited close by. She lowered herself onto it. Elara hovered behind her like an anxious sparrow. "Elara," Kael began, tone shifting from conversational to serious, "I need to ask you something concerning your sight." She tensed. "What about it?" "Last night," Kael said, "a patrol found one of my scouts dead near the southern ridge. No wounds, no struggle, only dust where his face should have been. My men believe it was an accident, a creature, or a weapon." Elara's breath caught. She knew that pattern. She had seen it in visions and old scrolls. "You think it was your curse," she said quietly. He did not deny it. "I was nowhere near the ridge," Kael said, "but the curse has grown unpredictable of late. Even at a distance, if I lose control, you fear it lashed out on its own." Kael nodded once. She heard the scrape of metal. "Someone is attempting to provoke instability and frame me for it. My cousin is certainly capable." A breath. "But what concerns me more is this. The curse responds to my emotions, and lately, someone has been trying very hard to manipulate them." Elara considered. "Sareth." "Yes." The single word was a growl. "Why come to me with this?" she asked. "Because," Kael said, voice lowering, "your sight may show what mine cannot. And because you are the only one here without an agenda tied to Varinth's throne." Elara hesitated. Her sight was as much curse as blessing. But if she refused, more men might die. "I will try," she said, "but I cannot promise clarity." "Clarity would be a luxury," he said dryly. "We will settle for honesty." A faint rustle reached them, the sound of someone approaching. Thorin shifted, hand going to his sword. "Lord Kael," a soldier called breathlessly. "My lord, an incident in the west corridors. There's been an attack." Kael rose instantly. "On whom?" The soldier swallowed. "On the princess." Elara's blood turned to ice. "What?" "The assassin was intercepted before reaching your chambers," the man said, panting. "He carried toxins, blades. The guards subdued him, but—" "And the assassin?" Kael demanded. A pause. "Dead, my lord." "He was turned to dust." A heavy silence. Elara gasped,
reaching blindly for Elara. "Gods, preserve us!" Kael exhaled slowly, too slowly. Elara heard it, the razor edge of barely contained panic beneath the control. "This began inside the keep," Kael said, "not on the ridge, which means whoever is provoking this is close." Elara steadied herself. "And it means your curse responded in defense of me." It shouldn't have. His curse had never acted with intention, never chosen targets. Unless, her breath caught. A vision brushed the edge of her awareness, a thread, a heartbeat, a whisper of swirling essence aligning with hers. Kael stilled. "Elara, what is it?" She shook her head slightly. Nothing certain, only a feeling. She could not tell him, not yet, that she sensed their fates tangled tightly, dangerously together. "Captain," Kael said sharply, "double the guard around her chambers. No one enters without my command. No one." "Yes, my lord." "Elara," Kael said, turning back to her. His voice softened in a way she had not heard before. "You are not safe here." She lifted her chin. "Then I will not hide." "You should," he said roughly. "And you?" she asked. "Will you hide?" He stiffened. "It is different." "It is not," she said quietly. "Someone is maneuvering both of us. Separately, we are vulnerable. Together," she hesitated, "together, our abilities stabilize." He did not answer, but something in the air shifted, the storm's edges receding slightly, like a beast curling back from a precipice. "You believe this," he said at last. "I do." Another breath. "Then I will keep you close." Maera made a scandalized noise. "My lord, she—" "Elara," Kael interrupted, ignoring Maera completely. "Stay near me until we find who is orchestrating this." She steadied her hands on her cloak. "If that is what will keep both realms from falling into chaos, then I agree." "For now," he said gently, "let me at least escort you back to your chambers. And stay in the garden with me a moment longer. It calms the curse. And it calms my sight," she said. "Then we will both use it." They walked slowly among the frost-green pines, neither speaking. Their presences, her muted, fragmented visions, and his tightly leashed storm, brushed against each other like wary animals learning not to fear. Elara felt her pulse ease. The visions retreated. Kael's curse quieted, the essence around him no longer trembling. They were, inexplicably, stabilizing one another. Kael stopped beside a stone basin where water trickled in a thin line. "Elara," he said, voice barely more than a breath, "I will not let harm come to you." The words should have chilled her. Instead, they warmed her through the cold air. "I believe you," she said. He hesitated a moment, then replied, "Good, because this is only the beginning." By nightfall, the fortress buzzed with tension. Guards doubled their patrols. Steel whispered at every hallway turn. Elara sat on the bed in her tower room, Maera pacing like a trapped bird. "They tried to kill you," Maera muttered, "and they turned to dust for it. That alone proves that Varenth is not a place where anything is simple," Elara said gently. "And the Basilisk Lord? Are you going to trust him now?" Elara lay her hands flat against her knees. "I do not trust him," she said honestly, "but I do believe he meant what he said." Maera paused. "Which part?" "That he will not let harm come to me." Maera made a soft, defeated noise. "This is madness. You know that, yes?" "Yes," Elara said. "But it is also the path before us." She lay down at last, trying and failing to rest. The blindfold pressed against her eyes, soothing and stifling all at once. Sleep crept slowly. When the visions came, they were thin, fleeting. Kael's shadow falling across stone, a shattered helm,
a hall lit by flames, and her own voice calling his name. She woke with a whisper. Kael. A tremor ran through her. Something dangerous was stirring in the fortress, in Varenth, in her, and in the tie, whatever it was, forming between her and its cursed lord. Snow came in the night. Elara knew it before Maera whispered it, before Thorin knocked at her door with the day's report. The air in the tower had changed. Sound softened, as if the world had been wrapped in wool. The usual distant clank of practice in the training yard below was muted, replaced by the occasional thump of boots slipping and short bursts of laughter as someone fell. She stood on the balcony in her cloak, fingers curled around the stone railing, feeling the cold bite through the leather of her gloves. The mountain wind carried the faint, clean scent of snow, water locked in silence. White as a shroud out there, Maera muttered from the doorway. Fitting. For what? Elara asked. For the way everyone is acting, since the assassin turned to dust, Maera said darkly. The whole fortress is jumpy. Even the stone looks nervous. Elara let out a slow breath. She still remembered yesterday's announcement in the garden. The scout dead on the ridge. The assassin disintegrated outside her door. Both deaths felt too carefully placed to be coincidence. Someone wanted chaos, and they were using Kael's curse and her presence to feed it. A knock sounded. This time it was the measured 3-beat that signaled Thorin. Come in, Elara said. The lower halls, Maera repeated. What business could you have down there? Thorin hesitated.
The remains of the assassin, he said carefully. What there is of him. The Lord believes your gift may see more than our eyes. Ilara's stomach tightened. You want me to read essence from dust? Can you? Thorin asked. She considered. Essence lingered in places of strong emotion and sudden death. Sometimes it clung to objects, surfaces, air. Seers could trace those threads, if they dared. I can try, she said. Maera made a soft, protesting sound. Elara! I came here as a hostage, Elara said quietly. If I can help stop whoever is playing games with Kael's curse and with my life, I must. Maera's silence held worry, but also reluctant respect. Then I'm coming with you, she said at last. I assumed as much, Elara replied. Thorin led them down, deeper than Elara had yet gone. The air cooled as they descended, the stone underfoot changing from polished floors to rougher, chillier steps. The scent shifted too, less smoke, more damp, with a faint metallic tang. Where are we? Elara asked. The old cistern level, Thorin replied. We sealed most of the reservoirs off when we carved new channels from the mountain stream, but the storage rooms remain. The assassin's body, or what's left, is kept there, away from curious eyes. Curious or frightened? Elara asked. A bit of both, Thorin said grimly. They reached a corridor where sound echoed oddly. Thorin stopped at a thick wooden door, banded with iron and knocked twice in a pattern. Bolts slid back. The door opened. Kael was inside. She felt him before he spoke, the now familiar pressure in the essence, the storm coiled tight. It flared briefly when she stepped over the threshold, then eased, as if recognizing her. Thank you for coming, he said. The room smelled of old water, stone, and something dusty that made the back of her throat itch. She heard the flicker of a single torch. What have you kept? Elara asked. Very little, Kael said. Thorin. Armor rustled. Thorin moved to her side, guiding her forward until her boots brushed something on the floor, a canvas tarp, from the brush of rough fabric against her shoes. Most of him fell apart, Thorin said carefully. There's dust, clothing, a knife, nothing else. The dust itself may hold echoes, Elara murmured. Death that sudden tends to tear essence loose. Maera's fingers clamped onto her sleeve. "You don't have to touch it," she whispered. Elara thought of the dead scout, the patrol's fear, the weight on Kael's voice when he'd admitted he might have killed at a distance without knowing. "I do," she said. She knelt, glad of the thick skirt under her cloak, and extended one hand. Her gloved fingers brushed the tarp cautiously, then the gritty texture of dust beneath it. She suppressed a shiver. "Remove your glove," Kael said quietly.
She hesitated. "Essence carries better through skin," he added. "If you mean to do this, do it properly." The thought of touching the dust bare-handed turned her stomach, but he was right. Elara peeled off one glove, feeling cold air bite her fingers. She pressed her fingertips to the edge of the dust, and, beyond that, to the hilt of the knife lying among it. The world tilted. Essence surged up her arm like ice. She sucked in a breath, and the cistern vanished. For a heartbeat, she was not herself. She was a man moving down a corridor, breath fast, hands sweating on the hilt of a knife coated with oily poison. Shadows crowded around him, shadows that were memory and fear. A voice echoed in his mind, low and persuasive. "They called you nothing," the voice murmured. "An unblooded boy, a nobody. Do this, and your family will never want again. You'll be remembered." A hand had pressed a small metal coin into his palm earlier that day, in a smoky tavern. The coin bore a sigil, a coiled serpent pierced through the eye. Elara's heart stuttered. She knew that serpent now. It hung from rings and hilts among Kael's nobles, but on that coin the eye was drilled clean through, empty. The boy had approached the tower stair. Guards stood at posts, but one motioned him through, bored, unalarmed. Someone higher had cleared his way. The boy's pulse had thundered as he crept toward Elara's chamber door. He barely had time to raise the knife before something, cold, invisible, annihilating, had swept through him. He had no time to scream. Just a flash of gold fabric through the crack of the door. That had been Maera moving inside. And then everything had become dust. Elara tore her hand away with a gasp. The cistern snapped back around her. Torchlight wavered. Her stomach heaved. "Elara?" Kael's voice was rough. "What did you see?" She swayed. Before she could fall, a strong hand gripped her forearm. Bare skin brushed bare skin where her glove had been removed. The effect was immediate. Essence roared between them like a gust of wind funneled through a narrow pass. For a heartbeat, she glimpsed more than the boy's death. She saw herself blindfolded, standing in a hall of stone. Kael beside her, unmasked. She could not see his face, but she felt the warmth of his hand at her back, steady and sure. People knelt before them, not in subjugation, but in oath. The air held neither war's metallic tang nor the brittle tension of a truce, but something like calm. Then it was gone. She jerked back as if burned, breath ragged. Kael released her at once. "Elara?" "I'm fine," she lied. "You are pale," Maera snapped, "and shaking." "Elara," Kael repeated, more firmly. "What did you see?" She drew in a breath, then another, willing her pulse to slow. "The assassin was a boy," she said. "Someone promised his family security in exchange for my death. They gave him a coin, a serpent with its eye drilled out. And someone on your staff cleared the way for him," Thorin swore quietly. "Might be anyone," he muttered. "Half the palace bears serpent sigils. But not that one," Elara said. "Not with the empty eye. That mark felt older, hidden." Kael's tone chilled. "You should leave, Princess. You've done enough. Thorin and I will follow this trail." He was dismissing her. She understood the instinct, to push danger away from her, but it grated against her. "You'll need my sight again," she said. "If whoever is orchestrating this is willing to sacrifice boys, they won't stop with one attempt. Which is why you should stay in your rooms, Elara said fiercely. And wait to be killed in my sleep? Elara countered. No. Kael made a low sound, the kind that might precede either argument or reluctant agreement. Elara, he began. Your curse killed that boy, she said, cutting him off gently. But not by choice. It reacted because he meant to harm me. This isn't just about your people or mine anymore. Whoever is tampering with essence is tying your curse to my life. He fell silent. The truth hung between them, heavy and unsettling. Who benefits, Thorin said slowly, if the Basilisk Lord's curse becomes unpredictable and the Dawnrealm's last seer dies in his home? Seraph, Kael said at once. No hesitation. Thorin did not argue. Elara made a protesting noise. He wouldn't. No, he would. I saw his smirk in the hall. Many others, too, Kael added grimly. Those who want war again. But my cousin has the most to gain if I am branded too dangerous to rule. And if the Dawnrealm believes you killed me, Elara said quietly, the treaty shatters. Exactly, Kael said. His storm flared, then receded. He was angry, very angry, but he was also afraid. Come, he said, not back to your chamber, to the garden. Kael, Thorin began. I will not have her in that tower while I am hunting a traitor, Kael snapped. Post guards there, yes, but she stays where I can reach her quickly if the curse reacts again. Elara's heart gave an odd, synchronized kick with his words. It was not just protectiveness. It was awareness of the way their essences had collided when he touched her, of the vision of them standing together in a calmer future. She had not told him that part, not yet. The garden's quiet wrapped around them like a cloak. Snow dusted the pine branches and collected in the crooks of stone planters. Someone had swept the main paths, leaving the scent of cold stone and bruised herbs. Kael paced beside her as they walked, armor whispering. Thorin and Elara remained a discreet distance away, far enough not to overhear low voices. You saw more than the assassin, Kael said at last. Elara hesitated. Why do you say that? When I touched you, he said. The curse stirred, not outward, but inward. It recoiled. I have never felt that before. And you flinched. Not like you were seeing the boy, like you were seeing something else. Elara chewed her lower lip. If I tell you, she said slowly, it will not be a promise. Visions rarely are. Only possibilities. One thread among many. Tell me anyway, he said. She exhaled, mist pooling in the cold air. I saw us, she admitted, standing in a hall, not like the great hall now, warmer. The essence was calm. You were unmasked, and I was not blindfolded. We stood side by side while people pledged themselves to us, not in fear, in respect. He stopped walking. The garden went very still. That is, he sounded shaken, impossible. Perhaps, she agreed, but it was there. I cannot remove my helm, he said quietly, not without risk. And I cannot remove my blindfold, she replied, not without losing control. But in that vision, we had both learned how. Together, he said. Yes. Snow drifted softly from some unseen ledge. The garden's essence hummed, a gentler, living vibration compared to the rest of the fortress. What we saw, what you saw, Kael corrected himself, could simply be your mind trying to comfort you, painting a softer future. Perhaps, Elara said again, but she did not think so. The vision had carried the weight of something more than wishful thinking. The essence had felt aligned, stable, as if a knot had been loosened. Whether it comes to pass or not, she said, it suggests something important. Our magic stabilizes when we are close, when we touch. That is why your curse turned the assassin to dust at my door, and not elsewhere. Someone tied us together on the essence level.
Maybe unknowingly, maybe by design. You think this bond is interference? Kael said. I think it is a fact, she replied. What we do with it is choice. He resumed walking, more slowly now. You speak of choice as if it is simple. It rarely is, she said, but it is still ours. They reached the stone basin again. Water trickled, unfrozen, thanks to some subtle heat woven into the stone. Kael braced his hands on the rim. For a moment, he looked very tired. I was raised to believe my bloodline was a curse, he said. My ancestor unleashed our gaze in arrogance and left this burden to his heirs. Every one of us has failed in some way. My grandfather burned a village by accident. My mother petrified a traitor and went mad from guilt. I have spent my life locked behind steel and discipline. Now someone dares to twist even that into a tool. His voice scraped, raw. And you, he added, softer, were bound in cloth and fear because your sight frightened those who should have guided you. We are both weapons restrained. And now we are here, together,
in a garden carved from stone and stubbornness. He huffed a laugh, sounding surprised at himself. You make it sound poetic. Blame the snow, she said. It softens even northern horrors. Flatterer, he muttered. They stood there in a quiet that was not entirely uncomfortable. The storm of his essence brushed against the edges of her perception, calmer here. The constant itch of unspent visions in her skull eased. Kael, she said. He straightened slightly. Yes? If we are to survive this, she said, we must decide something now. Are we allies or merely two people enduring the same siege? Is there a difference? He asked. Yes, she said. Allies trust each other. Endurers just hope the other doesn't stab them in the back before the siege lifts. He was quiet for a long beat. Trust is not something I offer easily, he said at last. Nor I, she replied. And yet, he said slowly, when the assassin died, my curse reacted to protect you. When I touched you, it recoiled rather than lash out. And your sight seems less painful near me. Yes, she said. That sounds, he said, suspiciously like fate. Or essence manipulation, she offered. I prefer to believe we still have some say in the matter. So, he said, you would have us choose to trust, rather than surrender to some cosmic design. Exactly. He turned toward her. She could not see his face, but she felt his attention as keenly as any gaze. I will try, he said finally, to be your ally, not just your jailer. And I will try, she replied, to be yours, not just the Dawnrealm's hostage. His gauntleted hand shifted on the stone rim, then hesitated near hers. Slowly, as if testing both his courage and the curse, he extended 2 fingers and brushed them lightly against the back of her hand through the fabric of her glove. Nothing exploded. No stone cracked. The essence gave a faint, startled ripple, then settled. Her throat tightened. It was the smallest of touches, but it felt like the beginning of something that might, one day, match the vision she had seen. The next few days became a study in tension. Kael kept Elara near him more often. He invited her to sit quietly at the side of the great hall during council sessions, ostensibly so he could ensure her safety. In truth, she suspected it was also because having her nearby steadied him. She did not object. The hall was a noisy web of essences, ambitious nobles, fearful stewards, tired soldiers. Sitting in the same place day after day, she began to map them by sound, by pattern, by the tug of their emotions on the air. She came to recognize the clipped cadence of Lord Sereth's speech, the way his words flowed like oil over stone. He favored questions over statements, always framed as concern.
And if the Dawnrealm's promises fail? he asked one afternoon, voice smooth. "If their caravans do not arrive, our people starve while we wait for grain that never comes." "Then we will hold them accountable," Kael said, "as they will hold us if we fail to keep their trade routes secure." "A balance of threats," Sareth said. "Forgive me if I do not call that peace." Elara listened. Behind his words she heard something else, a hunger, sharp and cold. His essence tasted of iron and smoke, of something coiled and waiting. She did not trust him. Other nobles, though, seemed less sure. Some murmured agreement with his provocations. Others shifted uneasily, torn between old loyalties and new possibilities. Elara spoke rarely. When she did, Kael gave her the floor with a small tilt of his helm that signaled deference, not to her authority, but to her insight. "They worry that peace will make them weak," she said once, when Sareth questioned yet again why Varenth should rely on trade instead of raids. Sareth turned his attention toward her. "Should it not?" he asked pleasantly. "Comfort softens. Fat bellies do not march well. Hungry ones march worse," she said, "and dead men do not march at all." A ripple of dark amusement traveled through the hall. "You suggest we trust entirely in the Dawnrealm's benevolence?" Sareth said. "No," Elara replied. "I suggest you trust your own capacity to adapt. War is not the only forge that sharpens a people." Her father had said something similar once, in a very different hall. She wondered if he would recognize his words in her voice. "And what would a blindfolded princess know of forges?" Sareth asked softly. "You have touched no steel. You have bled in no snow." "Perhaps not," she said, "but I have listened to men die in corridors outside my chamber. War is very loud, Lord Sareth, even through walls." Silence followed that. Sareth did not reply, but she felt his attention settle on her like a weight. There was calculation in it, and something like irritation. After the council adjourned, Kael walked with her down a side corridor toward the garden, Thorin shadowing them at a distance. "You made him look foolish," Kael said. "I told the truth," she said. "Which is why he looked foolish," Kael replied, a thread of dry humor in his tone. "I doubt I changed any minds," she said. "Nobles rarely surrender grudges in a day. Trust me," he said. "You planted doubt in some. That is enough for now." Their steps echoed. The corridor here was high and narrow, with arrow slits that let in bars of cold light. Elara could feel the wind pressing against the walls, testing. A new sensation pricked at her. An itch in the essence, like static before lightning. She stopped walking. "Elara," Kael said, "something is wrong." The thought came not as words, but a sharp tug at her gut. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. Kael stilled. The storm around him flared, tasting the air. "Yes," he said, "a surge." Thorin's boots scraped as he moved closer. "My lord?" Before anyone could answer, a shout rang from behind them. A hiss of something cutting through the air followed. Elara flinched instinctively, though she could not see the danger. The essence shrieked, a thread of intent flying toward them. An arrow. She hadn't seen arrows often, but she had felt their murderous path in visions. This felt the same, a thin, fast line of death. "Down!" Kael barked. Armor crashed against stone as he moved. She sensed rather than saw the moment he chose. He stepped not away from her, but in front of her. His helm turned. The storm inside him broke. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then power tore through the corridor. Elara heard the arrow mid-flight shatter, not against metal, not against stone, but against something for which she had no word. The air itself seemed to crack. The essence lines that threaded this space trembled. Stone screamed. A piece of the wall ahead, some column or decorative carving, simply ceased to be. Dust and powdered rock exploded outward. The concussion knocked Elara backward. She would have fallen if a gauntleted arm hadn't wrapped around her, dragging her against a solid chest. She coughed, lungs filling with gritty air. The storm raged. Not outward now, but inward, in Kael. She felt it tearing at him, howling for more. He was shaking. "Elara," he ground out, "stay back." She was already pressed against him, his arm a steel bar across her shoulders. The essence whirled. The blindfold did nothing to dim its presence. She felt it, wild and clawing, desperate to finish what it had begun. He's going to lose control. The realization cut through her shock. If he did, this corridor would become a tomb. For her, for Thorin, for any servants or guards nearby. Perhaps for half the fortress. She did not think. She acted. "Elara!" Maera's distant voice shouted from somewhere behind. She must have been following at a farther distance today. But Elara couldn't spare attention. She turned in Kael's grip, reaching up with both hands. Her fingers found his breastplate, then the rough line of the gorget near his neck, then the lower rim of his helm. He seized her wrists. His hands were ice cold. "Do not," he rasped. "I'm not removing it," she said fiercely. "I'm holding on." The storm clawed at her senses, dizzying. "Elara," he ground out, "I can't." "Yes, you can," she snapped. "Listen to me." She drew a breath, deep as she could in the dust. "Do you feel the garden?" she said. His grip on her wrists tightened painfully. "What?" "The garden," she repeated. "The pines. The water. The way the essence softened there. Remember it. Remember the air." "This is not the garden," he bit out. "Essence is essence," she said. "It listens. It remembers. You have held it still 1,000 times. Do it again. Not for yourself, for your people, for me." She didn't know if any of that was true. She knew only that his panic fed the storm, and that panic came from believing he was a danger without control. "You think you are only a curse," she said, voice low but steady. "You are more than that. You chose a treaty. You chose this corridor between me and that arrow. Choose now to stop." In her mind's eye, behind the blindfold, beneath the roar of the present, she reached for the vision of the hall she had seen. Calm, warm, Kael unmasked beside her. She clung to it as if it were a rope in a flood. "Kael," she said again, more softly this time, "look at me." He made a low sound. "I will not." "You are wearing a helm," she said. "You cannot hurt me by turning your head. Look at me." It was a ridiculous thing to demand of a man who believed his very glance could kill. But slowly, so slowly she almost didn't notice, his grip on her wrists shifted. His head turned. She could not see his eyes. She saw nothing at all. But she felt his attention. She imagined looking up into a gaze that she could not meet. She imagined it anyway. "The assassin is dead," she said quietly. "The arrow is gone. There is nothing left to destroy but us." His breath tore in and out of his chest. "Do you want to destroy me?" she asked. His hands spasmed. "Never." "Then hold it in," she said. "For me." Something gave. The storm did not vanish. It could not. But it folded, grudgingly, pulling its claws back from the walls. The essence lines in the corridor stopped screaming and shuddered instead, like horses skittish after a thunderclap, but no longer bolting. Kael sagged forward, armor creaking. His grip on her wrists loosened, then fell away entirely. She heard him brace a hand against the wall, gauntlets scraping stone. "Elara," he said hoarsely, "are you hurt?" She realized she was shaking. Dust clung to her hair, her cloak, the blindfold. "I've been better," she said, attempting lightness and nearly succeeding. "But no, I'm intact." "By all the silent gods," Thorin breathed. "The column!" Elara turned her head slightly. "What happened?" "A support pillar halfway down the corridor," Thorin said, voice reverent and horrified. Gone. Just gone. The ceiling's holding, but if you'd been a few steps ahead. But we weren't, Elara said firmly. We're here. Mera rushed up, coughing, her hands patting Alara's arms, shoulders, checking for injury. You reckless, foolish girl, she whispered, half sob and half scold. Talking to a storm like it's an overexcited child. Elara let herself lean briefly against Maera's solid warmth. Then she straightened and turned back toward where she felt Kael's presence, now thinner, frayed. Who loosed the arrow? Kael asked Thorin, voice returning to steel. Find them. We are already searching, Thorin said. The men on this corridor swear they saw nothing until the shot. There must be a hidden vantage, or a hidden accomplice. Sareth, Elara thought. Out loud she said, the same hand that hired the boy likely arranged this. They are escalating. Then we will escalate our response, Kael said. He sounded composed again, but Elara heard something underneath. Shame. He did not appear in the great hall that evening. Counselors muttered, rumors raced ahead like wildfire in dry grass. A column gone, they say. Nearly brought the corridor down on his own head. He's losing control. Did you see the dust? It was everywhere. No arrow left. No trace. And the princess? Not a scratch. Protected, some say. Elara sat in her seat along the wall, head bowed as if in thought. In truth, she listened. They were afraid. Afraid of Kael, afraid of her, afraid of what it meant that she seemed able to calm him. Some of that fear could be turned, directed, if handled carefully. Sareth's voice cut through the murmur. Our Lord is weary, he said smoothly. Carrying such power inside him must weigh heavily on the mind. We should not judge him too harshly for momentary lapses. He was offering faux sympathy and planting seeds of doubt at the same time. Elara rose. She could feel every gaze in the hall swivel toward her. Lord Sareth speaks truth, she said, surprising even herself with the clarity of her voice. Power weighs heavily, on those who bear it, and on those forced to live alongside it. I know this as well as anyone. And yet, Sareth said politely, you do not turn halls to dust when startled, princess. There are different kinds of destruction, she replied. Some tear stone, some tear trust. Both are deadly. A charged silence. She had no official standing here beyond hostage and symbol, but Kael had given her the courtesy of his ear. That bought her a sliver of space now. I was beside the Basilisk Lord when the arrow flew, she said. I felt his choice. He stepped in front of me. He could have turned away and let me die without ever lifting a finger. Instead, he risked himself. He risked losing control to protect a hostage. You may call that weakness if you like. I call it unacceptable courage. Unacceptable? Someone muttered. That's a Dawnrealm idiom, she said dryly. It means the kind of courage that makes others uncomfortable because it asks them what they would do in the same position. A few of the younger soldiers chuckled despite themselves. Sareth's tone cooled. You speak well for your protector, perhaps a little too well. And you speak much, Lord Sareth, she said, for someone who stood nowhere near the danger, yet now benefits most from telling the story of it. A muscle ticked in his jaw. She could not see it, but she heard it in the tiny pause before his next word. Accusations, princess? He asked softly. Observations, she replied. My visions concern essence, not gossip. And the essence in that corridor today was not only Kael's. Someone else's intent coiled there, guiding that arrow. He knew what that meant. She could feel it in the sudden chill of his attention. You claim to see assassination threads, he said. Curious that you did not warn us beforehand. It came too fast, she said. Visions are rarely convenient.
They arrive like storms, not schedules." "And yet you calmed our lord," Sereth said. "One might almost think you had orchestrated." "That is enough," a new voice cut in. Kael. Elara hadn't heard him enter. Neither had half the hall, judging by the startle. He moved to his place at the dais. His steps were steady. His helm was intact again, either repaired or replaced. But his essence felt different. Still storming, but leashed more tightly than she had ever sensed before. The corridor incident had rattled him, but it had also forced something to shift. "Princess Elara speaks under my protection," he said. "If you question her account, you question mine." Sereth inhaled slowly. "We meant no disrespect, cousin." "You meant plenty," Kael said. "But I have no time for it tonight. There is a traitor in these walls, perhaps more than one. We will find them. Until then, anyone caught spreading tales that undermine the treaty will answer to me." Sereth bowed slightly. "As you wish, my lord." The council session that followed was brief and sharp. Orders were given, patrol routes adjusted, supply chains inspected for tampering. When it adjourned, Kael descended from the dais and walked directly to Elara. "Come," he murmured. She rose and followed, Mera close behind. He led them not to the garden this time, but to a small chamber off one of the internal staircases, a room that smelled faintly of parchment and oil. A lamp burned on the table. "Leave us," he told Thorin and Mera. Mera bristled. "Absolutely not." "Mera," Elara said gently, "it's all right." "It is not," Mera hissed. He nearly died," Elara cut in quietly. "So did we. Now let me speak with him." Mera's breath came sharp. Then, with visible effort, she forced herself to step back.
"I will be right outside this door," she said to both of them. "I would expect nothing less," Kael replied. The door shut. The room shrank around them, intimate and still. Kael stayed standing for a moment, then exhaled and removed his gauntlets, one by one. The soft thunk as each hit the table sounded louder than it should. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" Elara asked. "For what you did in the corridor," he said. "For what you said in the hall. For not running screaming in the opposite direction." "I almost did," she admitted. "But I thought the storm might follow." He made a sound that might have been a laugh and might have been a choked sob. "You were right," he said. "It would have." She heard him move to sit. The leather of his armor creaked. His helmet did not clink against the table. He kept it on. "I came closer today than ever before," he said softly. "One more breath, one more heartbeat of panic, and I would have brought that corridor down. Thorin, the servants, you, all of you. But you didn't," she said. "Because you told me not to," he said. "As if it were simple." "It wasn't simple," she said. "It was necessary." He was quiet for a moment. "My grandfather used to tell me," he said, "that our bloodline exists to be a warning. Power without restraint is ruin. I have spent my life trying to prove him wrong, that we could be something more than a living cautionary tale." "You have," she said. "Have I?" he asked. "Or have I simply postponed the inevitable? Today suggests the latter." "I disagree," she said. "The inevitable would have been destruction. We are still here. That is change." "And what if next time you are not?" he asked quietly. "What if I cannot hear you over the roar? What if you are not there? Elara," he continued when she did not answer at once, "every day that you remain in this fortress, you are in danger. From my enemies, from my curse, from my own fear. I should send you back to the Dawnrealm. Let your father claim I broke the treaty. He would be angry, but you would be safe." "You cannot," she said. "I am the Lord of Varenth," he replied. "I can do many things." "Not this," she said. "And why not?" he demanded. "Because the same people who sent the assassin and loosed the arrow will not stop at me," she said. "They want your throne. They want war.
If I leave now, they will use that to claim you refused the treaty in bad faith. They will twist any story to suit them. And if you stay? He asked. I can see, he said simply. He made a soft, impatient noise. You cannot see with that cloth over your eyes. You know what I mean, she said. I can see threads others cannot, intent in the essences, echoes of choices. I am not a sword or a shield, Kael. I am a lens, a mirror.
And you need that, whether you like it or not. He fell silent. The chamber's smallness pressed around them. And besides, she added more quietly, if I go back now, I know exactly what awaits me. My father will lock me in a tower of his own, surrounded by priests and seers, wrapped in more blindfolds and more fear. Here, I am at least doing something. Being nearly shot, he said, nearly pulverized by flying stone. I have had worse nights, she said dryly. He huffed. You dramatize. You catastrophize, she countered. Silence stretched, then softened. You truly believe, he said slowly, that we are better together. Yes, she said without hesitation. Despite the risk, he pressed. Because of it, she corrected. If we are bound at the essence level, then separating us may make us both more unstable. Being near you quiets the visions. I know you feel it. The curse settles when I'm close. He exhaled slowly. I do feel it. Then we lean into that, she said. We make it our advantage instead of someone else's weapon. That is what allies do. He shifted. Metal whispered. There is something else, he said. The sigil you described, the serpent with an empty eye. I have seen it before. Where? She asked. In a book my grandfather kept locked away, he said. A record of the oldest houses of Varenth, before the curse, before the wars. That serpent belonged to a branch of our line struck from the records when they tried to overthrow the throne, and were cast out. The House of the Hollow Eye. She shivered. Charming. They were thought dead, he said, extinct. But it appears their sympathizers remained, hidden, waiting. And now Sereth wears their shadow, she said. I have never seen him bear that sigil openly, Kael said, but he would be the one to dig up old grudges and make them useful. Then we watch him, she said, and whoever whispers in his ear. We? He echoed. Yes, she said. You have eyes, I have sight. Not in the usual sense, he murmured. No, she agreed. In the more inconvenient one. He made another small, helpless sound that might have been a laugh. Do you ever stop? Talking? She asked. Not often. Thinking? Even less. His armor rustled as he leaned back. Very well, he said. We do this your way. For now. We hunt together. We stand together. If the bond between our magics is a chain, we will pull on it until the one who forged it stumbles. And when he does? She asked. Then, Kael said, voice lowering, I will deal with him. There was steel in that, and something older, darker. The Basilisk Lord's promise. Only one condition, Elara said. You negotiate even now? He asked, almost incredulous. Always, she said. If I am to stand beside you in halls and corridors and gardens while people aim curses and arrows at us, then we stand as partners, not as lord and hostage, not as monster and sacrifice. He was quiet for a heartbeat. 2. You ask a great deal, he said. You offer a great deal, she replied. He shifted again. When he spoke, his voice had changed, not in tone, but in something deeper. Very well, he said. I will treat you as a partner in this, not merely as collateral. You, in turn, tell me when your visions show danger, even if it concerns me. Yes, she said. And, he added, you will not risk yourself without warning me first. She considered. I will try. Elara, he said warningly. I will do my best, she amended. But visions do not ask permission before they pull me by the throat.
He accepted that with a small grunt. "It is the most I can ask." He rose. The lamp flame flickered at the movement. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To speak with Thorin," he said. "We will begin quietly. I want a list of everyone who has access to the tower levels, the arrow slits in that corridor, and the western armory. I want to know who has been to the old archives in the last year. And I want Sareth watched, but subtly. He is too clever to be caught by open suspicion." "And me?" she asked. "You," he said, "are going to rest. You held back a storm today. Even if you pretend it was nothing, your hands were shaking." She folded them in her lap reflexively. "Traitorous things." "Partners or not," he said, "I will still order your captain to drag you to bed if I must." "Elara," Maera called from outside, muffled. "If he is threatening you, I will come in there." Kael sighed. "And Maera will ensure you remain alive long enough to see whether your vision of that calm hall ever comes true." Elara smiled, small and genuine. "I would like that." "So would I," he said quietly. He reached for the door, then hesitated. She heard leather creak as he turned back. "Elara." "Yes?" "Thank you," he said again, "for choosing to stay." "You're welcome," she said, "for choosing not to crush us all under a mountain of your own making." He huffed. "Go to sleep, princess." She inclined her head. "Good night, Kael." The door opened. Maera swept in with a flurry of cloak and outrage. Kael's presence moved away, down the stair, his storm leashed but still restless. Elara sat on the edge of the narrow cot in the little chamber, hands slowly unclenching. They had crossed some threshold today. Not just the corridor with its shattered pillar, not just the exchange of danger and calm. They had chosen. Not fate, not curse, not prophecy. They had chosen each other, as allies, as partners, as two dangerous, broken things, daring to believe they could be more together than apart. The vision of the future hall hovered at the edge of her awareness, no longer a distant mirage, but a possibility wearing the first fragile bones of reality. "We will see," she whispered into the quiet. The essence around her thrummed in answer. Somewhere deep in the fortress, a man with a serpent ring and a hollow-eyed sigil heard the news of the failed arrow and smiled a thin, cold smile. War had not come. Not yet. But the pieces on his board had moved. And now, to his displeasure, two of them were no longer separate, but bound. Midwinter came with a sky like hammered iron and a fortress full of secrets. News from the Dawnrealm had arrived 3 days earlier, carried by a frost-bitten courier whose horse nearly collapsed in the courtyard. The treaty, he reported, was holding, for now. Raids had ceased. Trade caravans prepared to leave the southern plains as soon as the mountain passes were declared safe. "And if they are not declared safe?" Kael had asked dryly. "Then the merchants will complain and go anyway," the courier had said. "Gold does not like to sit still, my lord." Elara had smiled at that, even as unease coiled in her stomach. Peace was moving into place, in words and wagons, but inside Varyn's walls the air felt more brittle each day. Thorin's quiet investigation had turned up too many small oddities. Guards whose patrol routes had been changed at the last moment by unnamed superiors. A scribe who had died of sudden illness after being seen near the old archives. A missing key to the West Armory that no one admitted to losing. And the sigil of the hollow-eyed serpent kept returning, in whispers and half-hidden scratches on stone. "They are testing us," Elara said one afternoon as she sat with Kael in the garden. Snow clung to the pines and the air smelled of cold and rosemary. Probing for weak spots. "They will find none," Kael said. But his voice held no complacency, only iron resolve. "Midwinter Council is in 2 days," he continued. "Tradition demands I call the nobles and captains together, swear oaths for the coming year, and display the strength of the realm, in front of many eyes. "And if your curse slips in front of those eyes," Elara said quietly, "the fear they already feel will calcify, and the hollow eye will have exactly what it wants." "Yes," Kael said. He had not slept much these past nights. She could hear it in the roughness of his voice, the heaviness of his steps. She did not need sight. "Call it off," she said. "Delay the council until we find the traitors." "I cannot," he said. "To cancel midwinter would be taken as a sign of weakness, or worse, of deceit. The nobles would whisper that I fear to let them see me up close." "You do," she pointed out. "I fear what they might make of what they see," he corrected. "There is a difference." She rubbed gloved fingers over the carved arm of the bench. "Then we prepare for a trap," she said. "Assume they will strike during the council and plan accordingly." He was silent a moment. Then, "What do you suggest?" "For one," she said, "we make a list of everyone who benefits if the council ends badly. Everyone who would receive land, title, or glory if you fall." "That would be half the hall," Kael muttered. "Then we narrow it," she said. "Who stands to rise the highest? The hollow eye lives in shadows, not in front lines. They will want a figurehead people already know. Someone with a name, like yours." "Sareth," he said, no hesitation. "Then assume he will act," she said, "and do not let pride keep you from precautions." "You have become very comfortable giving orders in my halls," he observed. "Someone must," she replied. "You are too busy glowering." He made a choked sound that might have been a laugh. "Glowering is one of the few pleasures left to me." "I could make you a list of alternatives," she said, "but I fear you would reject most of them." "Try one," he said. "Sleep," she said promptly. He snorted. "Next." "Smile." "Physically possible, but risky," he said. "It might frighten people more than the helm." She huffed. "Ask for help," she said softly. He fell quiet. The wind whispered through the pines. Snow flurried lightly, catching on her cloak. "I am asking for help," he said at last. "Is that not what this is?" "Then accept it fully," she said. "Let me stand beside you at midwinter. Not hidden on a side bench, beside you." "Elara," he said slowly, "they already fear you. If you stand at my right hand, they will see it as a confirmation of every whispered story about seers steering kings." "Perhaps," she said, "but they will also see that you are not standing alone. Monsters do not share the dais, Kael. Men do." He was silent long enough that she wondered if she had overstepped. "When you speak," he said finally, "it is very easy to forget you cannot see the expressions you evoke." "I hear them," she said. "I heard your jaw tighten 3 sentences ago." "And now?" he asked. "Now," she said, "I hear something looser. Not quite laughter, not quite resignation." He exhaled. "Fine," he said. "You will stand beside me. You realize that makes you a larger target." "I was already a target," she said. "I may as well choose my own ground." He inhaled, as if to argue, then let the breath go. "You cannot be moved once you have chosen," he said. "Stone and stubbornness," she said lightly. "You did build this place, after all." "It was my grandfather," he said. "I merely try to keep it standing." Something in his tone tugged at her. "You are keeping more than stone standing," she said softly. He did not reply. But when they walked back through the fortress toward the council chamber, his steps fell in time with hers. Not dragging her, not leading too far ahead. Beside her. Midwinter dawned with a sky clear and brittle as glass. Sunlight struck the snow and turned the world beyond Elara's blindfold into a brightness she could feel like heat on her skin. The great hall hummed with people. She heard it as soon as she stepped through the doors.
Voices layered on voices, the clink of metal cups, the soft scuff of boots. Nobles in heavy cloaks, captains in polished armor, stewards and scribes moving between them like nervous birds. Kael stood at the dais, the weight of his helm obvious in the measured way he held his head. His armor was black with pale silver etching, serpents and pines intertwined. Around him, the essence coiled tightly. A storm braced against itself. Thorin led Elara to the small stair leading up to the dais, then stopped. "This is where I am supposed to say you can still change your mind," he murmured. "And this is where I am supposed to ignore you," she replied quietly. He sighed. "You are terrible at being a docile hostage." "Thank you," she said. Myra squeezed her hand once at the base of the steps, then retreated to stand with the attendants along the wall, where she could keep Elara in view. Elara mounted the steps on her own. The hall quieted as her boots struck the stone. She could feel every pair of eyes following her. Kael turned slightly as she approached. She sensed his presence shift to make room for her to stand at his right. "Princess Elara," he said, voice carrying, "thank you for joining us." His acknowledgment was deliberate. It told the hall, "She is here because I asked, not because she forced her way." "The Dawnrealm honors Midwinter in its own way," she said clearly. "I am curious to see how Varenth greets the turning of the year." Someone snorted. Someone else cleared their throat. The tension eased by a hair. Sareth's voice floated up from the cluster of nobles near the front. "With less wine and more knives, usually," he said lightly. "We find it keeps the blood moving." "Perhaps today we might attempt more wine and fewer knives," Elara said before Kael could reply. A few of the captains laughed. Kael's shoulders shifted in what might have been a silent sigh. "Let us begin," he said. The rituals of Midwinter were both solemn and practical. Oaths were sworn, captains promising to guard the passes, stewards vowing to keep granaries full, nobles pledging to provide levies if needed. Kael spoke sparingly, voice steady. Elara listened, learning the undercurrents. Some vows were given freely, others were edged with bitterness. When it came time for Kael's own vow, the hall stilled. "I, Kael Varyn," he said, "Basilisk Lord of Varenth, swear by blood and stone to guard this realm from within and without, from hunger and from needless war, from those who would use our power for glory instead of defense. I swear to hold this curse in restraint and to see that no more sons are buried for the pride of dead men." His words rippled through the hall. Some faces turned away. Others lifted, surprised. Elara felt his essence tighten, then settle. Saying the vow out loud did something to it, anchored it. "And I," she said, before she could think better of it, "Elara Dawnfell of the Dawnrealm, bound here by treaty, swear to use what sight I possess to prevent blood where I can, and to speak truth where it is unwelcome, for the sake of both our realms." A murmur. "Unwelcome truth is rarely appreciated," Sareth said, voice like silk over steel. "Fortunately," Elara replied, "truth does not require appreciation, only ears." Sareth's essence prickled. There was food then, simple but plentiful. Winter stews, heavy bread, smoked meat. Elara ate enough to satisfy Myera's eventual scolding, then set her bowl aside, listening. The longer the hall remained calm, the more her shoulders wanted to relax. That was when the essence began to shift. It started as an itch, like before the arrow in the corridor, a prickle along the back of her neck. Kael stiffened beside her. He felt it too. "Do you—" he began. "Yes," she murmured, "something's coming." Her hand brushed his gauntlet under the edge of the table. The contact steadied both of them for a heartbeat. Sareth's voice rose, smooth and inviting. "My lord," he called, "before the formalities conclude, may I request a demonstration?" Elara's stomach knotted. Kael's head turned slightly. "This is not a day for spectacle," he said quietly. "And yet," Sareth said, "our people have whispered for generations of the basilisk's power. They fear what they do not know. Surely, if they witnessed the true extent of your control, it would soothe them." Elara heard the trap in it as clearly as if he'd laid it out on parchment. "You ask me to let loose the curse in a hall full of my own people?" Kael said, voice dangerously soft. "Not let loose," Sareth said quickly, "merely display, on something harmless, a boulder, a block of ice. Show them that you can choose where it falls, that you are not, as some claim, a storm that might break at any moment." He was pressing on Kael's greatest fear, and the noble's greatest unease at the same time, giving both sides a way to frame it as reassurance. "Elara," Kael murmured, so low only she could hear, "if I refuse, he will say I am hiding. If I accept, he will try to make you lose control," she finished. "Yes," she thought quickly. "Is there anything in this hall you could safely destroy?" "A statue, perhaps," Kael said, "but even that—" "The hollow eye wants panic," she said. "If you show perfect control, he fails. If you show none, he wins. If you do nothing, he twists it. Which outcome do you trust yourself to avoid most?" He was silent for a heartbeat. 2. Finally he said, "The first." "Then let us aim for that," she said. "Together." He nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement. "Sareth," he said aloud, voice carrying, "you would have your demonstration." "For the reassurance of all," Sareth said, masking triumph with a smile Elara did not need to see to imagine. "Then fetch the oldest statue in the hall," Kael said, "the one already cracked from the earthquake 5 winters ago. If it must be broken, let it be something the mountain has already half-claimed." A few stewards scurried to obey. Elara stood very still, listening to the shifting essence. It was not just Kael's storm now. Something else stirred, a slick, coiling presence beneath the floor, under the walls. Lines that had been quiet for decades were waking. They rolled the statue out, a carved stone warrior from some forgotten age. It scraped across the floor and came to rest at the far end of the hall, safely distant from the tables. Kael stepped down from the dais. The crowd parted. Elara wanted to catch his hand, but that would have been too telling. Instead, she stood straight at his place, as if she had every right to be there. "Everyone will remain behind the second column," Kael said. "No one will cross that line. Thorin, see it done." Thorin's barked orders set people moving. The front rank of onlookers stepped back, forming an invisible boundary. Kael stopped 10 paces from the statue. He stood there, still and straight, helm turned toward the carved stone figure. The hall held its breath. Elara's heart beat like a drum in her chest. Essence rippled, around him, not from him. She felt it pooling, gathering. And then, subtly, something cracked. Not stone, not yet. The stabilizing runes woven into Kael's helm flared, then faltered. Someone had tampered with them. "Elara," Kael said, tone suddenly tight. "Something's wrong." She felt it too, a faint, acrid tang in the air. Incense, perhaps, burning somewhere unseen. It smelled like bitter herbs and old metal. Whatever it was, its essence tangled with his, aggravating the storm. A ritual primed to push him past his limits. Sareth's voice slid through the crowd. "We are all watching, cousin," he murmured. "Do not disappoint us." The hollow eye had chosen their moment well. Kael lifted his hands to his helm, fingers pausing at the clasps. "If I do this," he said, low enough only she and the nearest guard could hear, "I cannot guarantee." "You will not be alone," she said quickly. "Remember that." He drew in a breath. Then he unlatched the helm and lifted it. The room went silent. Elara did not see his face. Her blindfold remained in place, fabric cool against her skin. But she felt the hall's reaction, a ripple of shock, of awe, of fear. He took one careful step forward. The essence howled. The storm inside him surged, pressing outward, tasting freedom. For a heartbeat, he held it. Then the incense smoke thickened. Someone dropped something into a brazier. She heard the hiss. A wet, pungent stink filled the air, sharp as blood on hot stone. Kael gasped. The curse clawed at his control. "Elara," he choked. "Get them out. I can't." The storm burst. It did not explode fully. Not yet. But it slipped the leash enough to send invisible waves lashing against the far wall. The cracked statue shuddered. Dust erupted from its chest, then its arms, then its face. In seconds, what had been a warrior was a heap of powder. The hall stirred. Some nobles gasped in awe, others flinched. Sereth's voice rose above them. "You see?" he called. "Such precision! Such marvel!" But beneath the words, his essence vibrated with anticipation. He wasn't finished. "Again!" someone shouted. "Another!" "No," Kael ground out. "That is enough." He turned, breathing hard. The storm battered at him from the inside now, desperate to find another target. The incense fed it. The tampered runes failed to soothe it. And then Sereth moved. He had been waiting at the edge of the crowd. Now he stepped forward, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "My lord," he said, "surely one more demonstration." He lunged. Not at Kael, at Elara. She heard the movement, the rush of displaced air, the scrape of boots on stone. A hand clamped around her arm. Cold metal pressed against her throat. A knife. Only one man in this hall would dare that, here, now. "Do not move," Sereth said softly, blade biting just enough to sting. "Any of you." The hall froze. "Elara!" Maera cried. "No!" Sereth snapped. "All of you, or Varenth's guest bleeds her welcome onto the floor." Kael's voice cut the air like a drawn sword. "Sereth." "Cousin," Sereth said pleasantly, though his breath came fast against Alara's ear. "What a display! Perhaps we should have you perform more often." His essence was no longer slick and concealed. It burned now, sharp and bright and hollow at the center, like a coal that had burned away too much of itself to be anything but heat. Elara stayed very still. The knife's edge was close enough that even a swallow would risk a cut. "Sereth," Kael repeated, "let her go." "Or what?" "You'll look at me?" He laughed, the sound high and harsh. "Do it! Turn that gaze on me, on all of us. Show them what you truly are." "No," Elara whispered. He tightened his grip. "Aha," he murmured. "You don't get to speak, princess. You've spoken enough in this hall." The essence lines around them writhed. The incense was thick now, churning the air. Kael's storm, already straining, slashed against its cage. "You rigged the helm," Elara said, keeping her voice low and steady. "You fouled the air. You wanted him to break." "Of course," Sereth murmured. "How else do you unmask a monster? You pull at its chains until they snap." "It is you they should fear," she said. He pressed the knife a fraction closer. "They fear me already," he said, "just not enough. But fear of you two together, that will be my greatest ally." "Sereth," Kael said. He was closer now. She felt the storm bearing down. "Let her go." "Make me," Sereth replied. He shifted, dragging her slightly to the side. He wanted a clear line between her and Kael. He wanted the curse to have nowhere else to fall. "I will give you a choice, cousin," Sereth said loudly enough for the hall to hear. "Turn that gaze on me and the princess. And this here. Let them see the full terror of the basilisk and know there is no containing it. Or hesitate, and I open her throat and blame you for bringing this danger among us. Either way, the treaty dies, and with it, your foolish dream of peace." The hall muttered. Some voices cried out for Sareth to stop. Others were too stunned, too frightened to speak. Essence screamed. The storm inside Kael battered at the edges of control. The smoke coiled around it, aggravating it, feeding it. He was losing the battle. Elara felt something crack, not in the stone this time, but in herself. She was blindfolded, hands empty, throat under a madman's blade, standing in the middle of a hall full of people who might die in the next heartbeat. She heard her mother's voice, distant and faint. "If you cannot control what you see," and High Seeress Vaelith's, "you must control what you allow yourself to see." She had spent her life obeying that second half. Now, for the first time, she understood the first. Sight was not only something that happened to her, it was something she could reach for. "Kael," she said quietly, "do you trust me?" His breath hitched. "Yes." It came without hesitation. "Then hold," she said. "Whatever happens next, hold as long as you can. Do not let it spill until I say." "Elara," he said, voice breaking, "what are you—" She lifted her hands slowly, ignoring Sareth's hissed warning, and found the knot of her blindfold. The hall gasped. Maera screamed, "Elara, no!" She untied the knot. The cloth fell. For the first time since she had been a child, cold air touched her eyelids. She opened her eyes. The world crashed in. Light slammed into her, too bright, too sharp. Colors she'd forgotten how to name. The high-arched ceiling, the banners, the faces, all a rush. But behind that, beneath it, around it, essence flooded her sight. Lines of power threaded everything, people, stone, air. They pulsed and flickered, woven into nets and knots. She saw Kael like a black sun at the edge of her vision, surrounded by whirling strands of darkened essence, his storm barely contained. The incense smoke glowed sickly green where it tangled with his aura. She saw Sareth behind her, his hand on the knife, his essence like a drilled-out stone, jagged around the edges, hollow in the middle. A thin, vicious thread ran from his heart to the hollow eye sigil hidden under his collar, binding him to something deep in the mountain. She saw the nobles, their lines fraying with fear, clumping toward exits that would be blocked by falling stone if the curse exploded. She saw futures, hundreds of them. Kael's gaze flaring and turning Sareth and Elara and half the hall to dust. Sareth cutting her throat. The ceiling collapsing, the mountain split. For a heartbeat, she nearly drowned. "Elara!" Kael shouted. "Close your eyes!" "No," she whispered. She clung to one thread, one possible path, thin as a hair. In it, she stood, unblindfolded, and reached out, not with hands, but with sight, guiding the wild lines of essence like streams diverted around rock. In that thread, Kael's storm did not vanish. It bent. She took a breath that tasted of smoke and stone and fear. "Sareth," she said, turning her head slightly, "you've made one mistake." He laughed harshly. "Only one?" "You think you can dictate the terms of this moment," she said. "You cannot." She lifted one hand, slowly, palm open, as if placating a frightened horse. "Kael," she said, eyes locked on the swirling storm around him. "Listen to my voice. Do you feel the essence?" "Too much," he ground out. "It's... Elara, your eyes." "Do you feel it?" she repeated. "Yes." "Then let me stand between it and the hall. Hold it toward me, just for a breath." "Are you mad?" Sareth hissed. "He'll kill you?" "Perhaps," she said. "But if he doesn't, you lose." Kael staggered a step. The storm flared, drawn by her open gaze. Essence lines whipped toward her, hot and cold at once. It hurt. It felt like staring into the heart of the sun. But she was not 8 anymore, screaming in the dark. She was a woman who had chosen. She reached into the storm. Not literally, not with fingers, with her will. With every lesson Valeth had ever muttered about focus and interpretation, every instinct she'd honed while blindfolded to sense currents she was never supposed to see, she grasped the wildest lines and pulled. The storm bucked. Kael choked. "Elara!" "Trust me," she whispered. "You said you did." He made a sound between a groan and a laugh. "I did, didn't I?" She shifted the tangled essence, inch by agonized inch. Not away from him. She could not take it away. It was his blood, his legacy. But she could redirect the surge clawing outward, turning it aside from the hall, from the crowd, from herself. She could not redirect it all. Some had to be spent. She chose where. "There," she murmured, eyes burning. "The wall behind Sereth. The old fracture from the quake. Let it go there." Kael gasped. His gaze, those terrible, unseen eyes, swung not toward her, not toward the gathered nobles, but toward the far wall. The storm broke. But this time it was not a mindless flail. It poured in a tight, focused stream, like a river forced through a gate. The ancient fracture in the stone wall screamed. Then it exploded outward. Dust and shards blasted into the open air beyond, carving a jagged new window that looked out over the frozen valley. A roar of wind rushed in, whipping banners and hair. Sereth cried out in shock, jerking back. The knife scraped Elara's skin, but did not slice Geep. The hall erupted in shouts. "Elara!" Mayera screamed. The storm recoiled. Like a snake that had struck and retreated, it coiled back around Kael, diminished but not spent. Elara swayed. Her vision blurred. "Still here," she murmured. "Still here." Sereth recovered quickly, too quickly. He snarled, essence tightening around him. The thread to the hollow eye sigil flared. "You think that was enough?" he spat. "You think a clever trick with your eyes changes anything? They saw it. They saw the power. They will never forget." "Good," Elara said, voice raw. "Let them never forget a lord who aimed his curse at stone instead of flesh." He hissed and pressed the knife harder. Enough of this. He drew back, preparing to plunge the blade. Something in Kael snapped, but it was not the curse. It was his self-restraint. In every other area, he moved. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, he crossed the distance between them. His hand shot out, not toward Sereth's face, but toward his wrist. His fingers, bare, he dropped his gauntlets, closed around Sereth's arm just below the hollow eye sigil. Essence shrieked. For an instant, Elara saw something impossible. Kael's storm pouring not outward, not into stone, but inward along the thin, vicious thread that bound Sereth to the hollow eye. Sereth screamed. The sigil burned white-hot, then black. The essence thread snapped. Sereth's knife hand spasmed. The blade clattered to the floor. A patch of his skin where Kael gripped him turned gray, then cracked, turning to powder that drifted slowly down like strange snow. Kael resisted him quickly, yanking his own hand back as if burned. Sareth dropped to his knees, clutching his arm and howling. The petrified patch did not spread. It remained, a blister of petrified flesh, a mark, a warning. The hall stared. Elara stumbled free of his loosened grasp. Mayera and Thorin surged forward, Mayera grabbing her, Thorin placing himself between her and any further threat. "Hold him," Kael said, voice like frostbite.
Do not let him near another blade." Guards leaped to obey, pinning Sareth's good arm behind him, forcing him face down on the stone. "You see," Sareth shouted, half mad with pain and thwarted ambition. "You see what he does? He touched me and I—" "You conspired with the hollow eye," Kael said, each word dropping like a weight. "You tampered with my helm. You hired assassins. You tried to kill the Dawnrealm's princess under truce and provoke war. You sought to tear this realm apart from within. And you dare to call yourself my judge?" Sareth laughed, ragged. "Yes," he gasped, "because you are too weak to do what is needed. You gave up the old ways. I would have restored them." "The old ways?" Kael repeated softly. "Burning villages, children turned to dust, our own people flung at enemies like stones." He stepped closer. Elara saw the storm around him still crackling, but contained. "You are not restoring anything," Kael said. "You are clinging to a rot that has eaten this mountain long enough." He turned, looking up at the watching hall. Elara saw their faces now, some pale, some furious, some ashamed. Many looked at Kael with raw fear. Some looked at him with something else. Hope, perhaps, or the beginnings of it. "You have seen what my curse can do," Kael said. "You have also seen what I choose to do with it. I will not be your monster, not Sareth's, not anyone's." He glanced toward Elara. For an instant his eyes met hers. She saw him, really saw him. His eyes were not pits of endless darkness, nor glowing pits of green as the stories said. They were like molten stone, cooled at the surface. Deep gray, shot through with faint threads of pale light. Power coiled behind them, yes, but also exhaustion, haunted memory, and fierce, stubborn will. Her breath caught. He flinched, as if expecting her to scream. She did not. Instead, she stepped forward, Maera's grip tight on her elbow, but not strong enough to hold her back. She reached out, slowly so he could refuse, and laid her fingers lightly on his forearm. The hall watched, stunned. The storm steadied. Elara's vision blurred at the edges as the flood of essence receded to something she could endure. "Kael," she said softly, "we are not done." He exhaled, the sound heavy. "No," he said. "We are not." He looked back at the hall. "Lord Sareth Varyn," he said, "by your own admission and by the evidence we have gathered, you have committed treason against Varanth and broken treaty with the Dawnrealm. You attempted to weaponize my curse and the princess's sight. You have killed our scouts and endangered every soul in these walls. For this I strip you of name, of title, and of any claim to this mountain. You will live long enough to see what your old ways have cost you." He paused. "You will not die by my gaze today," he continued. "Exile would be too kind, but I will see to it that you are taken to the old border, cast out, and marked so that every realm knows what you are." Sareth snarled. "You think exile is worse than death?" "No," Kael said. "I think it is exactly what you deserve. To live with the knowledge that even with every scheme, every betrayal, you failed." Sareth sagged, laughter turning to choked sobs of fury. Kael turned away from him and faced the hall again. "Anyone else who has made common cause with the hollow eye may confess now," he said. "Those who come forward willingly will be judged more mercifully than those dragged from holes and closets." Silence stretched. Then, slowly, one man stepped forward. A minor noble, if Elara's memory of his voice was right. His hands trembled. "My lord," he said hoarsely, They promised, my son—" "Yes," Kael said quietly. "They promised much. They always do.
Others followed, haltingly. Not many, but enough. A captain who had moved patrol routes. A steward who had slipped incense into braziers. A scribe who had altered records. Each confession frayed the hollow eye's web a little more. Elara swayed. The effort of holding her sight open in such a storm had drained her. Kael felt it. His arm shifted, steadying her. "Enough," he said to the hall. "For now. Thorin will take names. We will sort guilt from fear in time. For this moment, go. See that the wounded are tended. See that your families know you live." The hall began to empty, slowly, like water draining from a basin. When the last of the nobles and captains had gone, only a handful of guards, Thorin, Maira, Kael, and Elara remained. The new, jagged opening in the wall let in a knife of cold air. Snowflakes drifted in, melting on the warm stone. Elara shivered. Maira was there at once, wrapping a cloak around her shoulders with hands that still shook. "You," she said, voice thick, "are never doing that again." Elara managed a weak laugh. "I'll do my best." Kael turned to her fully. Now that the hall was mostly empty, he did not avert his face. He watched her with those molten stone eyes, as if bracing for whatever she would do. "Elara," he said quietly, "your eyes. They burned. They ached. But they were open, and the world had not yet crushed her beneath visions." "I am still here," she said. "You shouldn't be," he replied, a thread of anger in the words, anger born of fear. "No one should be able to stand in the path of that and live." "No one else has tried," she said softly. His jaw clenched. "You should not have been the first." "And yet I was," she said, "and it worked." He stared at her for a long, searching moment. Then, slowly, he lifted one hand. His fingers hovered near her cheek, not touching, asking. She nodded, just once. He cupped her face very lightly, as if she were glass. The storm hummed between them, but did not flare. It settled, like a beast finally recognizing the scent of its handler. "Your eyes," he said again, more quietly this time. "They are—" She waited. "Beautiful," he finished. Her breath caught. "They are a mess," she protested, "red and swollen and probably full of dust." "Still beautiful," he said. She laughed once, shakily. "Your eyes," she said, "are nothing like the stories." "Disappointed?" he asked. "Relieved," she replied. He huffed. Behind them, Thorin cleared his throat pointedly. "My lord," he said, "princess, the hall is drafty." Maira sniffed. "And full of fools who do not appreciate how close they came to being statues themselves." Kael let his hand fall, though not quickly, as if reluctant to break the contact. "Elara," he said, "can you bear to cover them again?" She hesitated. The thought of the blindfold, the dark, the safety, pulled at her. But so did the memory of the hall, the futures, the thread she had caught and steered. "I don't know," she admitted. "Not yet. I think, maybe, cloth in public, choice in private." He nodded slowly. "We can find a way," he said. "Together." She swallowed. "Together," she echoed. Outside, winter wind howled through the ruin in the wall, flinging small bright flakes into the upheaved hall of Varenth. Inside, amid dust and shattered stone, two dangerous beings stood closer than they ever had before, the bond between them no longer a hidden thread, but a living, chosen line. The crisis had not broken them. It had forged something new. What they did with it would decide not only their own fates, but those of two realms poised between war and a peace that might, for the first time, be real. Snow melted slowly in the weeks after midwinter, dripping from the pines and filling the mountain air with the scent of thawing earth. The fortress, shaken to its foundations by the attempted coup, rebuilt itself in small, steady motions. Stones reset, braziers relit, servants murmuring in hallways once again. Yet nothing returned to exactly what it had been. Not for the realm, not for Kael, not for Elara, and certainly not for the two of them together.
Elara woke now with sunlight on her eyelids, not the heavy weight of a blindfold. The first few days after the council had been overwhelming. Color and light poured in, too bright, too fierce. She had spent hours in the sheltered garden, learning the world anew with eyes she had not used since childhood. Kael had brought her there himself each morning, moving quietly beside her so she would not feel exposed. He had spoken little, letting her take in the world at her own pace. The deep green of pine needles, the shimmer of frost on stone, the cool gray of his armor, the warmer gray of his unhelmeted eyes staring at her as if he could not quite believe she was real. She had learned his face slowly. The world had taught her to prepare for monstrosity. What she found instead was a man with lines of responsibility etched into the corners of his eyes, a scar that ran like a silver thread from jaw to ear, and a quiet, relentless strength. Her sight flickered sometimes, wild, flashing visions that made her gasp, but she learned to anchor them with breath and with focus. Kael sat with her each time, giving her his steadiness to lean on until the storm passed. "You pull me back," she told him once. "And you hold me still," he said. "We are even." Perhaps they were. The hollow eye sympathizers were dealt with swiftly and publicly. Not executed, for Kael refused to turn his curse into a spectacle, but exiled with stripped titles and markers that left no one in doubt of their treachery. Sereth was taken under heavy guard to the border and cast out. "He will try to return one day," Thorin warned. "And he will find a different Varenth when he does," Kael replied. Elara did not fear Sereth's return. She had seen enough futures now to know that the path he walked was narrowing, collapsing under the weight of his own choices. There were more important things ahead, for both realms. 3 weeks after the council, a Dawnrealm delegation arrived, nervous, wary, unsure what they would find. Elara stood in the courtyard beside Kael as the gates opened. She felt the tension winding through the soldiers, the way their essences bristled at the sight of the Basilisk Lord standing bare-faced under the winter sun. Her father dismounted from his horse, boots crunching in fresh snow. "Elara," he said, voice tight. She stepped forward. "Father." His footsteps quickened. She sensed the moment he meant to seize her in a desperate embrace, but then he stopped short, swallowing the urge, as if suddenly uncertain whether she was still his to protect. "You are uncovered," he said. "Yes," she said softly, "I am." He looked shaken, not by fear, but by the realization that she had grown into someone he did not fully understand. "If they forced you," he began. "No one forced me," she said. "I chose this." His gaze flicked to Kael. "You stand beside him?" "Yes," she said again. Kael bowed, not deeply enough to be submissive, but with a respect that acknowledged the king as her father, not her master. "King Alistair," he said, "your daughter has been a partner in restoring stability to both our realms." "A partner?" her father echoed. Kael's voice did not waver. "Yes." Elara's father studied the two of them, the slight lean of Kael's stance toward her, the calm way Elara stood unblindfolded in the winter air, the thread of trust woven visibly between them. "You are different," he murmured. "We both are," Elara said. Her father exhaled slowly. "You look free." It nearly undid her. "Because I am," she whispered. There would be political negotiations, trade pact rewritings, new border agreements. But her father did not ask her to return home. He knew, perhaps from the way her sight no longer convulsed violently, or the way her shoulders no longer curved inward, that her place had shifted. She had not lost Dawnrealm. She had found something larger. Spring crept over the mountains in cautious steps. With the hollow eye routed, Varenth changed. Walls were repaired not with fear but with purpose. The people who had once flinched at Kael's shadow began to nod when he passed, uncertain but willing to trust where they had once known only dread. When Elara walked the halls beside him, they bowed to her as well, not in obeisance, but gratitude. The assassins had stopped. The corridors were safe again, and for the first time in a generation, no raids came from the Dawnrealm border. Peace had begun to look possible, even real. On the first clear evening of early spring, Kael led Elara up a narrow stair onto a high balcony carved into the mountainside. The wind was sharp but not cruel. The valley below glowed faintly with the last light of day. "Why bring me here?" she asked. He hesitated only a moment. "To show you something." She stepped closer. She had grown braver with heights now that she could see them. He removed his helm entirely, not just lifting it, but setting it aside on the low stone wall. It was the first time she had seen him place it somewhere with urgency. "You trust the air enough for that?" she said quietly. "I trust you enough for that," he replied. Her heartbeat stumbled. He turned to her, and the storm inside him was quiet. Not gone, never gone, but held with a calm that had once been impossible. "When I was young," Kael said, "I believed I would die alone in this castle, that my curse would take me, or fear would consume me, or war would burn everything I touched." She listened, breath stilling. "You did not change my curse," he continued. "You did not fix it. You did not break it." He lifted one hand, fingertips brushing her cheek. "You stood with it," he said softly, "and with me." Her throat tightened.
"I never asked to be your keeper," she whispered. "And you never became one," he murmured. "You became something else, something I did not think I was allowed." She placed her hand over his. "And what is that?" she asked. He hesitated only a moment. "Freedom," he said, "for both of us." The words settled into her bones. "And what do you want now?" Elara whispered. He exhaled, slow and unguarded. "I want peace for my people. I want the hollow eye buried for good. I want our realms to stand not as enemies, but neighbors." His hand slid from her cheek to her shoulder, warm and steady. "And I want," he said quietly, "the right to walk beside you without needing a treaty to justify it." Her breath caught. "It would be my choice," she said. His voice was barely a whisper. "Is it?" She stepped closer. "Yes," she said, "it is." He released a tremor of breath, half relief, half wonder. "Then," Kael said, "may I ask, properly this time, for you to remain in Varenth, not as a hostage, not as a symbol, but as yourself?" She smiled, slow and sure. "You may ask," she said, "and my answer is yes." The storm around him eased into a soft pulse, like a living thing that finally understood it was safe. He lowered his forehead to hers, cautious but unafraid. Elara closed her eyes, not to shut out visions, but to savor the warmth. Below them, wind whispered through thawing pines. The mountain breathed. The world balanced on a fragile but possible peace. Two broken legacies stood together at its edge, no longer bound by fear or curse or prophecy, but by choice. When Elara opened her eyes again, the world remained steady. Kael's did too. And the future, once a chaotic tangle of branching threads, felt for the first time like something they might shape hand in hand, together.